The morning sun cast long shadows across the mining colony on Kepler 442-2b. Velthari looked through the window of his office and watched the workers moving between the buildings. The Vethani people were peaceful by nature. They had built this colony to mine rare crystals, not to fight wars. But war had found them anyway. Velthari's hands shook as he read the message on his screen again. The Korthak Empire was coming. Their war fleet had already destroyed 2 other colonies in nearby systems. The reports were terrible. The Korthaks killed everyone they found. They took what they wanted and left nothing behind. Administrator called Yethmira from the communication station. The long-range sensors show ships approaching our system. Many ships. Velthari closed his eyes. He had hoped the reports were wrong. He had hoped the Korthaks would not find their small colony. But hope was not enough now. "How long do we have?" he asked. 6 hours, maybe 7, Yethmira replied. Her voice was quiet and scared. Velthari walked to the old communication console in the corner of the room. It had been there since the colony was first built over 100 years ago. The device was covered in dust. Nobody had used it in decades. This was the emergency beacon. The colony builders had installed it as a last resort. It was designed to call for help from something the old records called Deathworlders. Most people thought Deathworlders were just a myth. Stories told to scare children. But the stories said that Deathworlders were the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. They came from planets so harsh that living there made them incredibly strong and tough. The stories also said that Deathworlders would help those who could not help themselves. Velthari had no other choice. The colony had no weapons. They had no military ships. They could not fight the Korthaks. All they could do was hide and hope. He turned on the old beacon. The machine hummed to life, its lights blinking slowly. Velthari spoke into the microphone. His voice clear despite his fear. "This is Administrator Velthari of the Kepler 442-B mining colony. We are sending an SOS to any Deathworlder vessels that can hear this message. Our peaceful colony is under attack by the Korthak Empire. We have no weapons and no way to defend ourselves. We are requesting immediate assistance. Please help us. Coordinates are attached to this transmission." He sent the message and waited. The beacon would repeat the message every few minutes, sending it out across space. But space was vast, and the chances of anyone hearing it were very small. Far away, in a different part of the galaxy, Captain Hyeon Woo Kim sat in the command chair of the patrol vessel Soul's Light. His ship was on routine patrol duty, checking the outer edges of human space for any signs of trouble. Hyun Woo was young for a ship captain, only 32 years old. But he was smart and careful, which made him good at his job. He had joined the Terran Colonial Defense Network because he wanted to protect people. His own family had once lived on a frontier world that was attacked by pirates. The human fleet had arrived just in time to save them. "Captain," called Lieutenant Minseo from the communication station, "I'm picking up a strange signal. It's not on any of our normal frequencies." Hyun Woo turned to look at her. "What kind of signal?" "It appears to be a distress call, sir, but it's using very old transmission protocols. The signal is weak, coming from a system about 50 light-years away." "Put it on the main screen," Hyun Woo ordered. The message played, and the bridge fell silent. The alien's voice was filled with desperation and fear. When the message finished, Hyun Woo's crew looked at him waiting for orders. "Sir," said Minseo quietly, "they called for Deathworlders. Do you think they mean us?" Hyun Woo nodded slowly. He had heard the term before. Other alien species sometimes called humans Deathworlders because Earth was such a dangerous planet. Most humans thought it was just an insult, but this alien was asking Deathworlders for help. "Send this message to Fleet Command immediately," Hyan Wu ordered. "Use priority channels, and plot a course for the Kepler 442 system. Best possible speed." "Sir, we're just a patrol ship," said his first officer, Lieutenant Jin Ho. "We can't fight an entire enemy fleet." "No, but we can get there first and see what we're dealing with," Hyun Woo replied, "and maybe buy some time for the real cavalry to arrive." On Luna Station, Fleet Admiral G. Hai Park was reviewing reports when the priority message arrived. She read the alien distress call 3 times before calling her staff together. Admiral Park was 55 years old and had served in the human fleet for over 30 years. She had fought pirates, dealt with alien contact situations, and commanded ships in several small conflicts. But she had never seen anything like this. "What do we know about the Korthek Empire?" she asked her intelligence officer. "They're a militaristic species from the Orion Arm," replied Commander Sungjin. "They've been expanding aggressively for the past 50 years. They seem to specialize in attacking weaker civilizations. Our reports suggest they practice slavery and strip mining of conquered worlds." Admiral Park studied the star charts on the main screen. The Kepler 442 system was far from human space, but not impossible to reach. "What about this species asking for help?" "The Vithani?" "Peaceful miners and traders," Sung Jin answered. "No military to speak of. They've never bothered anyone. Classic victims for someone like the Korthaks." Admiral Park made her decision quickly. She had not become a fleet admiral by hesitating when people needed help. "Contact Admiral Lee's 3rd Battle Fleet. Tell him to prepare for immediate deployment. Full battle configuration." Her aide looked surprised. "Ma'am, that's a lot of firepower for a rescue mission." Admiral Park looked at the distress call on her screen again. The alien's voice echoed in her mind, filled with terror and hope. "Lieutenant, someone out there is asking Deathworlders for help. They're about to learn what that really means." The message went out across human space. Admiral Dong-Hyun Lee received his orders and began gathering his fleet. 12 heavy cruisers, 36 destroyers, 2 carrier groups, and the experimental siege vessel Busan's Hammer. It was enough firepower to level a planet, but Admiral Lee was not planning to destroy a planet. He was planning to save one. The human war machine began to move, and the galaxy was about to learn why Earth was called a death world. Admiral Dong-Hyun Lee stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Incheon's Fury. Through the viewports, he could see his fleet gathering in formation. 12 heavy cruisers moved into position, their hulls gleaming under the lights of nearby stars. 36 destroyers took their places in the outer ring, ready to screen the larger ships from attack. Lee was a veteran of 28 years in the Terran fleet. He had gray hair and scars on his hands from his early days as a fighter pilot. He had fought in border wars and anti-piracy campaigns, but this mission felt different. This time, they were not just defending human colonies. They were answering a call for help from aliens who had nowhere else to turn. "Admiral," said Captain Wanjie from the communication station, "all ships report ready for departure. The fleet is at full battle readiness." Lee nodded. His fleet was impressive by any standard. The heavy cruisers could punch through any known shield system. The destroyers were fast and deadly, perfect for hunting down fleeing enemies, and the 2 carrier groups brought over 200 fighters and bombers to the battle. But the most dangerous ship in his fleet was the Busan's Hammer. The experimental siege vessel was designed for one purpose: destroying heavily fortified targets. Its main weapon could crack a moon in half. "Captain Choi," Lee spoke into his communication device. "Are your destroyers ready?" Captain So Young. Choi commanded the lead destroyer squadron from her ship, the Daigu's Strike. She was young but experienced, having fought pirates in the outer colonies for 5 years. "All destroyers ready, Admiral," she replied. "We've run full diagnostics on all weapon systems. My ships are eager to show these Korthaks what human engineering can do." "Good. Wing Commander Yoon, what's the status of our fighter wings?" Wing Commander Taemin Yoon was aboard the carrier Daegu's Pride. He had been a fighter pilot for 12 years and had trained some of the best pilots in the human fleet. "All squadrons are loaded and ready, sir," Yoon reported. "We've equipped the fighters with the new quantum torpedoes. If the Korthaks think they can hurt innocent people, they're about to learn better." Lee smiled grimly. His pilots were the best in human space. They trained in conditions that would kill most alien species. Earth's heavy gravity and hostile environment had produced warriors unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Commander Han," Lee continued, "are your Marines prepared for ground operations?" Commander Woo Jin Han commanded the Marine assault, ship Gwangju's Sword. His ship carried 3,000 of the toughest soldiers humanity had ever produced. These Marines had trained on Earth's harshest continents and in the vacuum of space. "My troops are ready for anything, Admiral," Han replied. "We've studied the intelligence reports on Korthak ground forces. They rely on fear and brutality instead of skill. That won't work against us." Lee looked at the tactical display showing the Kepler 442 system. According to Captain Kim's latest report from the Soul's Light, the Korthak fleet had arrived and begun attacking the planet. The alien colonists were hiding in underground shelters, but they could not hide forever. "All ships, prepare for hyperspace. Jump," Lee ordered. "We're going to show the galaxy what happens when someone calls humans for help." Meanwhile, in the Kepler 442 system, the situation was getting worse by the hour. The Korthak fleet had taken position around the planet and begun their assault. Their ships were ugly and brutal-looking, covered in spikes and weapon ports. War Commander Gethkor stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the destruction below. He was a large creature, covered in thick scales and sharp teeth. The Korthaks had evolved on a harsh world, but not as harsh as Earth. They thought they were the strongest warriors in the galaxy. "Commander," said one of his officers, "the aliens are hiding in underground tunnels. Should we begin surface bombardment?" Gethkor grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Yes, destroy their cities. Kill anyone who tries to run. These weak creatures will learn what happens when they resist the Korthak Empire." The Korthak ships opened fire on the planet's surface. Buildings exploded in flames. The peaceful mining equipment was turned to scrap metal. Smoke rose from a dozen fires across the main colony. Deep underground, Velthari and his people huddled in the emergency shelters. The walls shook with each explosion above. Children cried, and adults tried to comfort them. "Administrator," whispered Yethmira, "do you really think the Deathworlders will come?" Velthari listened to the sounds of destruction above them. "I don't know," he admitted, "but it's the only hope we have." Far above the planet, Captain Hyeon-woo Kim watched the attack from his hiding spot behind one of the system's outer moons. His small patrol ship was no match for the Korthak fleet, but he could gather intelligence and wait for reinforcements. "Captain," said Lieutenant Minseo, "I'm detecting hyperspace signatures approaching the system. Multiple large ships." Hyun-woo felt his heart race. "How many ships?" I count 53 distinct signatures, sir. Heavy cruisers, destroyers, and at least 2 carriers. It's Admiral Lee's 3rd battle fleet. Hyan Wu smiled for the first time since receiving the distress. Call. Send a message to Admiral Lee. Tell him the Korthaks have 12 capital ships and about 40 support vessels. They're focused on the planet and not watching their flanks. Message sent, sir. In hyperspace, Admiral Lee received the intelligence report. 12 Korthak capital ships against his fleet was not even a fair fight. But Lee was not interested in fairness. He was interested in justice. All ships, Lee broadcast to his fleet. We are about to engage an enemy that attacks innocent civilians. They think they're strong because they pick on people who can't fight back. Today, they learn what real strength looks like. Captain Choi checked her destroyer's weapons one more time. Her ship carried enough firepower to level a city. Each of her destroyers was faster and more heavily armed than the largest Korthak vessel. Wing Commander Yoon ran through his pre-flight checks. His fighters were equipped with shields and weapons that the Korthaks had never seen. His pilots had trained in Earth's gravity, where the slightest mistake meant death. They were ready for anything. Commander Han made sure his Marines were prepared for planet-side operations. Each of his soldiers wore powered armor that made them stronger than any Korthak warrior. Their weapons could punch through the heaviest alien armor. 30 seconds to system entry, announced the navigation officer. Admiral Lee stood straight and tall on his bridge. Behind him, the most powerful military force humanity had ever assembled, prepared to defend aliens they had never met. It was about to become the shortest war in galactic history. All ships, Lee commanded, remember that there are innocent people down there counting on us. Show these Korthaks why Earth is called a death world. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace, like an avalanche of steel and fire. The Korthaks were about to learn that some distress calls should never be ignored. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system like a force of nature. 53 warships appeared in perfect formation, their engines blazing with controlled nuclear fire. The gravitational waves from their arrival rippled through space, detected by every sensor array within 2 light hours. War Commander Gethkor was watching the destruction of the colony's main city when his sensor officer shouted in alarm. "Commander, multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace, large signatures!" Gethkor turned from the view screen showing burning buildings below. "How many ships?" "I count over 50 vessels, sir. Unknown design. They're huge." Gethkor studied the tactical display. The new ships were indeed massive. The largest ones were bigger than anything in the Korthak fleet, but size meant nothing without proper weapons and tactics. "Unknown ships, identify yourselves," Gethkor broadcast on all frequencies. "You are interfering with a legitimate military operation of the Korthak Empire." On the bridge of the Incheon's Fury, Admiral Lee listened to the alien's message with cold anger. Below them, he could see the smoke rising from the attacked colony. Innocent people were dying while this creature talked about legitimate operations. "Open. A channel to all frequencies," Lee ordered. "Maximum power. I want every ship in this system to hear this." The communication officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." Admiral Lee's voice carried the authority of 30 years of military service and the backing of humanity's most powerful fleet. "This is Fleet Admiral Dong-Hyun Lee of the Terran Colonial Defense Force. You are in violation of the Galactic Convention on the Protection of Civilian Populations. You have attacked innocent people who posed no threat to your empire. Withdraw your forces immediately and surrender for trial, or face the consequences." In the underground shelters of the colony, Velthari and his people heard the transmission. Hope flickered in their eyes for the first time since the attack began. "Terran?" whispered Yethmira. "What are Terrans?" "I think," said Velthari slowly, "they might be the Deathworlders we called for help." On the Korthak flagship, Gethkor laughed at what he thought was a bluff from unknown aliens. His fleet had conquered dozens of worlds. No one had ever stood against the Korthak Empire and survived. "Terrans," he sneered into his communicator, "you have made a mistake coming here. This planet belongs to the Korthak Empire now. Leave, or we will add your ships to our collection of trophies." To emphasize his point, Gethkor ordered his flagship's main weapon to target the colony's largest city. The massive orbital bombardment cannon began charging, its energy readings spiking across every sensor in the system. "Sir," reported his weapons officer, "main cannon will be ready to fire in 30 seconds. Gethkor smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Let these Terrans watch as we finish destroying this pathetic colony. Maybe then they'll understand who they're dealing with." But Admiral Lee had seen enough. The Korthak commander was preparing to commit mass murder while human ships watched. This was exactly the kind of evil that humanity had sworn to fight. "Captain Zhang?" Lee spoke calmly into his communicator. Captain Min-Ho Zhang commanded the heavy cruiser Ulsan's Wrath. His ship was positioned perfectly for a first strike, its main guns already locked onto the Korthak flagship. "Yes, Admiral," Zhang replied. "You have the honor of the opening shot. Remove that ship from my sight." "With pleasure, sir." The Ulsan's Wrath fired a single salvo of relativistic kinetic rounds. The projectiles, accelerated to nearly the speed of light, crossed the distance between ships in seconds. They struck the Korthak flagship just as its bombardment cannon reached full charge. The result was spectacular. The kinetic rounds punched through the Korthak shields as if they didn't exist. They tore through the ship's armor and into its power core. The flagship, along with its entire crew, simply disappeared in a ball of expanding plasma. The explosion lit up the entire system. Where moments before there had been a massive warship preparing to murder civilians, now there was only empty space and glowing debris. The silence that followed was complete. Every Korthak ship in the system stared at the spot where their flagship had been. They had never seen weapons that powerful. They had never imagined that any ship could be destroyed so quickly and completely. "All ships," Admiral Lee broadcast to his fleet, "you are cleared to engage. Show them what happens when they threaten innocent people." What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration of why humanity had survived on one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. Captain Choi's destroyers moved like hunting wolves, their speed and agility far beyond anything the Korthaks had ever seen. They darted between the enemy ships, firing precisely targeted shots that crippled engines and weapons systems. Wing Commander Yoon's fighter squadrons launched from their carriers in perfect formation. The small craft moved through space in ways that seemed impossible, pulling maneuvers that would have killed most sapient species. The human pilots, trained in Earth's crushing gravity, treated the high-G combat as routine training. "Red Squadron, this is Red Leader," Yoon called to his pilots as they dove toward a group of Korthak cruisers. "Remember, we're here to save people, not show off. Make your shots count." "Copy that, Red Leader," came the responses from his pilots. These aliens picked the wrong species to mess with. The fighters attacked in coordinated waves, their quantum torpedoes punching through Korthak armor like paper. Enemy ships exploded or lost power and began drifting helplessly in space. Commander Han watched the space battle from his assault ship and prepared his Marines for planetary operations. The Korthaks had ground forces on the planet's surface, and those soldiers would need to be eliminated before the colonists could be truly safe. "Listen up, Marines," Han addressed his troops over the ship's communication system. "There are innocent aliens down there who called us for help. There are also enemy soldiers who think it's acceptable to attack civilians. We're going to show them the difference between picking on helpless people and fighting real soldiers." The Marines checked their weapons and armor one final time. Each soldier was encased in powered armor that made them stronger and faster than any organic creature. Their weapons could punch through tank armor or set to stun a living target without permanent harm. In space, the Korthak fleet was falling apart. Their ships were designed to intimidate weak opponents, not fight real warships. Against human technology and tactics, they were helpless. Captain Sojin Park commanded the intelligence ship Jeju's Eye. Her job was to make sure no Korthak ships escaped to bring news of this defeat back to their empire. Her ship's sensors tracked every enemy vessel in the system. "Admiral," Park reported, "3 Korthak ships are trying to flee toward the hyperspace jump point. Should I intercept?" "Negative," Lee replied. "Let them go. I want them to tell their empire what happened here. I want every Korthak commander to know what happens when they attack innocent people." The fleeing ships jumped to hyperspace, carrying news of humanity's arrival to the Korthak Empire. It would be the beginning of the end for their reign of terror. On the planet's surface, Korthak ground troops looked up at the sky and watched their fleet die. They had come expecting easy victory over helpless civilians. Instead, they found themselves trapped on a hostile world with human Marines preparing to hunt them down. In the underground shelters, Velthari and his people heard the sounds of battle growing closer. But now, instead of fear, they felt hope. The Deathworlders had come, and they were winning. "Administrator," said Yethmira, her voice filled with wonder, "I think we're going to survive this." Velthari nodded, listening to the sounds of human ships fighting above them. "Yes," he said, quietly. "I think we are." The space battle was over in less than an hour. What remained of the Korthak fleet drifted in pieces among the wreckage of their ambitions. But Admiral Lee knew that the real work was just beginning. Enemy soldiers were still on the planet's surface, and innocent civilians needed to be rescued. "Commander Han," Lee spoke into his communicator, "the space around the planet is secure. You are cleared for planetary assault operations." Commander Wu Jin Han stood in the drop bay of his assault ship, surrounded by 3,000 of humanity's finest Marines. Each soldier was encased in powered armor that gleamed under the ship's lights. Their weapons were loaded and ready. "Marines," Han addressed his troops, "we have 2 objectives down there. First, rescue the civilians who called us for help. Second, eliminate every Korthak soldier on that planet. These aliens think they can attack innocent people without consequences." Today they learned they were wrong. The Marines responded with a roar of approval. They had trained for years for missions like this. They had practiced urban combat, rescue operations, and alien environment warfare. They were ready. Major Yoonji Kim commanded the first assault wave. She had served in 3 different colonial conflicts and had never lost a soldier under her command. Her troops would secure the landing zone and begin the search for civilians. "Major Kim," Han continued, "take your battalion and secure the main colony area. Priority is finding and protecting the survivors. Rules of engagement are clear. Any Korthak soldier who surrenders will be taken prisoner. Any who resist will be eliminated." "Understood, sir," Kim replied. "My troops are ready to show these aliens what real soldiers look like." The assault ships descended through the planet's atmosphere like falling meteors. Their heat shields glowed, red as they cut through the air at tremendous speed. Anti-aircraft fire from Korthak ground positions bounced harmlessly off their armor. On the ground, Korthak soldiers looked up in terror as the human ships approached. They had been told that their fleet would protect them from any counterattack. Now they watched their ships burning in orbit while unknown enemies came for them. The first assault ships landed near the main colony with earth-shaking impacts. Their ramps dropped, and human marines poured out like an unstoppable tide. Korthaks had never seen anything like these armored warriors. Major Kim led her troops through the ruined streets of the colony. Buildings were damaged, but many were still standing. Smoke rose from fires that burned throughout the area. "Spread out," Kim ordered her Marines. "Squads 1 through 5, search for civilians. Squads 6 through 10, hunt down any remaining enemy soldiers. Remember, the aliens we're here to save are called Vethani. They're smaller than us and have blue-gray skin. Don't mistake them for the enemy." The Marines moved through the colony with practiced efficiency. Their armor's sensors could detect life signs through walls and debris. They found the first group of Korthak soldiers trying to hide in a damaged warehouse. "This is Sergeant Do-hyun," came a voice over the communication system. "I've found 8 enemy soldiers in Building 7. They're refusing to surrender." "Understood," Kim replied. "Use whatever force is necessary." The sound of weapons fire echoed through the colony for exactly 30 seconds. Then silence. "Enemy soldiers eliminated," Do-hyun reported. "No Marine casualties." Meanwhile, other Marine units were following sensor readings toward the underground shelters where the civilians were hiding. They moved carefully, knowing that frightened aliens might see them as just another threat. Lieutenant Jae-won found the first shelter entrance hidden beneath the rubble of a collapsed building. He could hear voices coming from below, speaking in the alien language. "This is Lieutenant Jae-won," he reported. "I found a civilian shelter, beginning rescue operations." He activated his armor's translation system and spoke into the shelter. Through an opening in the debris, "Hello," he called in the Vethani language. "My name is Lieutenant Jae-won of the Terran Defense Force. We received your distress call and came to help. You are safe now. The enemy fleet has been destroyed." Deep in the shelter, Velthari heard the voice speaking perfect Vethani. It was impossible, but somehow these alien warriors had learned their language. "How do we know you're not Korthaks?" Velthari called back. "Because," Jae-won replied, "if we were Korthaks, this shelter would already be full of smoke and fire. We are here to help you. Please come out so we can get you to safety." Slowly, carefully, Velthari climbed toward the surface. What he saw, when he emerged, took his breath away. The human Marine was enormous, nearly twice the height of a Vethani, and built like a machine of war. His armor was covered in sensors and weapons that looked far more advanced than anything the Korthaks had carried. But when he removed his helmet, Velthari saw a young face with kind eyes. "Administrator Velthari," Jae-won asked, "we received your distress call. I'm sorry we couldn't get here sooner." Velthari stared at this impossible warrior who spoke his language and apologized for not arriving fast enough to help. You're really Deathworlders?" Jae-won smiled. "We prefer the term human, but yes. We come from a planet called Earth, and we take distress calls very seriously." More Vethani emerged from the shelter, including Yethmira and dozens of families with children. They stared in wonder at the human Marine who had come to save them. "Is it over?" asked one of the children in a small voice. "For you, yes," Jaewon said gently. But we still have work to do. Across the colony, Marine units were systematically hunting down every remaining Korthak soldier. The enemy had spread out through the area, hoping to hide until rescue arrived. But human sensors could track them anywhere they went. Captain Sung-Ho Park commanded the intelligence ship Jeju's Eye in orbit above the planet. His job was to coordinate the ground operations and make sure no enemies escaped. "All Marine units," Park broadcast, "I'm detecting 17 Korthak life signs in the industrial complex 2 kilometers east of your position. They appear to be setting up some kind of defensive position." Major Kim received the information and smiled grimly. "Copy that, Jeju's Eye. We'll handle it." She led 2 squads of Marines toward the industrial complex. The Korthaks had barricaded themselves inside the main building and were waiting with their weapons ready. "Korthak soldiers," Kim called through her armor's external speakers. "You are surrounded. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to galactic law. Resist, and you will be eliminated." The answer came in the form of weapons fire from the building. Energy blasts struck the Marines' armor and bounced off harmlessly. "Wrong answer," Kim said quietly. The Marines attacked with overwhelming force. Their weapons punched through the building's walls as if they were made of paper. The battle lasted less than 5 minutes. Lieutenant Commander Ye-Jin Lee was leading a boarding party to capture intact Korthak ships in orbit. Her teams moved through the disabled enemy vessels, collecting data and taking prisoners. "Admiral," she reported to Lee, "we've captured the Korthak computer systems. Their databases contain coordinates for dozens of other systems they've attacked." "Hundreds of colony worlds, sir." Admiral Lee studied the data on his screen. The Korthak Empire was larger than they had thought, and it had been attacking innocent civilizations for over a century. "Understood," Lee replied. "Forward that data to Fleet Command immediately, and prepare those prisoners for interrogation. We're going to need to know everything about their military capabilities." On the planet's surface, the rescue operations continued throughout the day. Marine teams found shelter after shelter full of frightened but grateful civilians. Each time, the humans were careful to identify themselves and explain what had happened. The Vithani could hardly believe what they were seeing. These massive warriors moved with incredible precision and gentleness when dealing with civilians. They provided medical care, food, and protection without asking for anything in return. "Why did you come?" Velthari asked Major Kim as they walked through the liberated colony. Kim looked at the damaged buildings and the families beginning to emerge from hiding. "Because you asked for help," she said simply, "and because attacking innocent people is wrong." "But we're not your people. You don't even know us." Kim stopped walking and turned to face the alien administrator. "You called for help. That makes you our responsibility. That's what humans do." As the sun set on Kepler 442b, the last Korthak soldier was captured. The colony was secure, the civilians were safe, and the enemy fleet was nothing but debris in orbit. But Admiral Lee was already planning the next phase of operations. He had seen the data from the captured ships. He knew about the other colonies that needed help. "Commander Han," Lee called to his Marine commander, "how quickly can your troops be ready for redeployment?" "Immediately, sir," Han replied. "Why?" "Because," Lee said, looking at the star charts showing dozens of enslaved worlds, "we have a lot more work to do." The campaign that followed became known throughout the galaxy as the 100-Hour War, though it actually lasted only 96 hours from start to finish. Admiral Lee's decision to continue the offensive beyond Kepler 442b would reshape the political structure of known space forever. In the command center of the Inchan's Fury, Admiral Lee studied the data captured from Korthak ships. The information revealed a vast network of enslaved worlds, mining operations, and military bases. The Korthak Empire had been terrorizing innocent species for over 2 centuries. "Admiral," said his intelligence officer, Commander Sung Jin, "we've identified 43 different species under Korthak control. Most of them are peaceful civilizations that were conquered and enslaved. The youngest captive population has been in chains for 30 years. Lee felt cold anger building in his chest. 30 years of slavery because no one had been strong enough to stop the Korthaks. That was about to change. "Send a message to Fleet Command," Lee ordered. "Request immediate reinforcement of the 3rd Battle Fleet. Full authorization for extended operations. We're not stopping until every enslaved world is free." Within hours, more human ships began arriving in the Kepler 442 system. The 5th Fleet under Admiral Haya Jin Cho brought additional heavy cruisers and marine assault ships. The 7th Fleet contributed specialized siege vessels and support ships. But the most important arrival was Colonel Hyun-Soo Kang's Special Operations Command. Kang was a legend in the human military, a man who had planned some of the most successful military operations in human history. "Colonel Kang," Lee said as they met in the fleet conference room, "I need to hit 43 different systems simultaneously. Can it be done?" Kang studied the tactical displays for several minutes before answering. "Yes, but it will require perfect coordination. We'll need to strike fast and hard, giving them no time to organize a defense or harm their prisoners." "What do you need?" "Everything we have and more ships from home. This isn't just a military operation, Admiral. This is the complete destruction of an empire." The human military machine began to move with terrifying efficiency. Ships that had been scattered across human space converged on the staging area around Kepler 442b. Supply vessels brought ammunition, fuel, and reinforcements. Medical ships prepared to treat rescued prisoners. On the planet below, the Vithani colonists watched in amazement as their skies filled with human warships. Velthari stood beside Major Kim on a hill overlooking the main colony. "How many ships do you have?" he asked in wonder. "Enough," Kim replied simply. "And more coming every hour." "But why? You saved us already. Why continue fighting?" Kim turned to look at the alien administrator. "Because we found out about the others. All the species the Korthaks have enslaved. All the innocents who are suffering right now. We can't just walk away knowing that? Even though they're not your people? Especially because they're not our people," Kim said firmly. "Anyone who calls for help becomes our responsibility. That's what it means to be human." The assault began. Exactly 96 hours after the first human ship had entered the Kepler 442 system. Human fleets appeared simultaneously in 43 different star systems, each one carrying enough firepower to level a planet. The coordination was perfect. As Korthak commanders in one system tried to send warnings to others, they discovered that their entire communication network was under attack. Human electronic warfare specialists had infiltrated their systems and cut off all contact between Korthak worlds. In the Korthak home system, War Marshal Gethmox was reviewing reports from his outer territories when his communication officer ran onto the command bridge. "Marshal, we're receiving emergency transmissions from 17 different sectors. All report massive attacks by unknown ships." Gethmox was the supreme commander of all Korthak military forces. He had led the Empire's expansion for 40 years and had never faced a serious challenge to Korthak power. "Unknown ships? What kind of ships?" "The transmissions are confused, sir. The reports mention ships larger than anything in our fleet, weapons that can destroy our vessels with single shots, and warriors in powered armor who fight like machines. Gethmox felt a chill run down his spine. Send the Imperial Guard fleet to investigate the nearest attack. I want to know what we're dealing with. But before his orders could be carried out, human ships appeared at the edge of his own system. The massive forms of human dreadnoughts dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons already trained on Korthak installations. Colonel Kang commanded this final assault from his ship, the Soul's Vengeance. His mission was not to destroy the Korthak homeworld, but to capture its leadership and force a complete surrender. All ships, Kang broadcast to his fleet, remember that there are likely prisoners on that planet. We're here to liberate, not destroy. Precision strikes only. The human fleet moved toward the planet with unstoppable determination. Korthak defense. Platforms opened fire, but their weapons were decades behind human technology. The human ship's shields absorbed the attacks without difficulty. "Colonel," reported his weapons officer, "enemy orbital defenses neutralized. The planet is defenseless." "Begin landing operations," Kang ordered. "I want that government complex secured within the hour." Human Marines descended on the Korthak capital city like an unstoppable force of nature. Their assault ships landed in the government district, while fighters provided air support overhead. War Marshal Gethmox watched from his command bunker. As human soldiers moved through his capital with overwhelming superiority, his own guards, the finest warriors in the Korthak Empire, lasted less than 10 minutes against the human assault teams. "Marshal," one of his remaining officers said quietly, "perhaps we should consider surrender." Gethmox looked at the tactical displays showing human forces closing in on his position. His empire, built over centuries of conquest, was falling apart in a matter of hours. "Open a communication channel," he said finally. Colonel Kang received the surrender offer while his Marines were breaching the final defensive positions around the government complex. "This is War Marshal Gethmox of the Korthak Empire," came the transmission. "I wish to discuss terms of surrender." "There are no terms," Kang replied coldly. "Unconditional surrender, or we continue this assault until your government no longer exists." 30 minutes later, Gethmox and his surviving commanders were in human custody. The Korthak Empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for over 2 centuries, had ceased to exist. Across 43 star systems, human fleets were liberating enslaved populations and capturing Korthak military assets. Species that had been prisoners for generations suddenly found themselves free. The rescued aliens could hardly believe what they were seeing. These humans fought with a skill and technology that seemed impossible, but they treated prisoners with dignity and provided medical care to the wounded. On the former slave world of Kepler 618c, Admiral Cho's Marines liberated over 2 million aliens from mining camps. The prisoners had been working in terrible conditions for decades, and many were near death from starvation and disease. "Get medical teams down there immediately," Cho ordered. "I want every one of those people treated and fed. Set up temporary hospitals if necessary." Lieutenant Commander Sang Woo directed the relief operations on the planet's surface. His troops worked alongside human medical personnel to provide care for aliens who had given up hope of ever being free. "Commander," one of the rescued aliens said through a translator, "why did you come for us? We had no way to call for help." "You didn't need to call," Sang Woo replied. "When we learned you were here, that was enough. Within a week of the Korthak Empire's fall, representatives from dozens of liberated species gathered on Kepler 442b for an emergency galactic conference. The Vethani colony had become the symbol of humanity's intervention, and Velthari had been chosen to speak for all the rescued populations. "Honored humans," Velthari said as he addressed Admiral Lee and the other human commanders. "We do not have words adequate to thank you for what you have done. You have freed species that had been enslaved for centuries. You have ended a reign of terror that seemed unstoppable." "We did what anyone should do," Lee replied simply. "We helped people who needed help." "But you are not anyone," said Kelthara, "a representative of the Zephyrian people who had been enslaved for over a century. You are something new in this galaxy. You are protectors." The formal request came the next day. Speaking on behalf of 47 different species, Velthari asked humanity to join the Galactic Council not as members, but as permanent protectors. "We want to establish the Terran Protection Fleet," he explained. "A permanent human military presence dedicated to responding to distress calls throughout known space. We will fund it, support it, and pray that we never need it again." Admiral Park, who had arrived from Luna Station to oversee the negotiations, considered the proposal carefully. "The responsibility would be enormous," she warned. "Once we accept this role, every species in the galaxy will expect us to help them when they're in trouble." "Yes," Velthari said simply. "That is exactly what we're asking." 6 months later, Captain Hyen-Woo Kim stood on the bridge of his new ship, the patrol vessel Jeju's Guardian. His vessel was part of the new Galactic Protection Service, a joint human-alien organization.